In this video we'll deal with the Salesforce design, an important topic in the modern world, trying to make sales in the face of competition both globally and online. So it's important that the Salesforce design is properly configured to have maximum impact. There are many factors indeed that need to be taken into consideration when designing the Salesforce. For example, customer needs and changing demands. We live in a very technological world, a world which is rapidly changing, and customer needs are changing in response to that. And also customers themselves are better informed because of the internet and because of communications channels. And there's more feedback about the products and customer feedback online and so on. So it's necessary to have a sales force who are familiar with these and are still able to make sales face to face and direct to the customer. But also competitors are changing. As I said a moment ago, we live in a very technological age, one in which newness, modernity is all around us. We live in an age where products are changing rapidly. We also live in a world which is highly globalized, so that the competitors may not be national, the competitors may be international. So we have all of these influences being brought to bear. We have changing market demands and size. Products that were once popular have become less popular, and products that were less popular have had a new lease of life because of innovations and change. And all of this is happening simultaneously. All of this is in the mix. All of it needs to be addressed by the sales force. As I said, technological advancements are everywhere, and more people are aware of the information they can access online. More and more people are aware of issues about the products and the feedback and the experiences of customers who purchased previously and how they were dealt with and the aftercare service they received. All of that is only possible because of the technological advancements in terms of information relating to the sale. But there are also technological advancements in terms of the product and the product design. Products are becoming ever more sophisticated. Household products are becoming more sophisticated. Even products that we don't expect to be that sophisticated are becoming so. For example, a refrigerator. It may be programmed, some may be programmed to reorder certain items because the stock of those items are being depleted by the household. Now, it sounds like science fiction, but it's happening. It's also the case that if we buy a television, we're probably more likely buying a screen that has entertainment whenever we want it, not when the providers want us to have it. It's when we want it as customers. But the sales force should be expert in handling this technology. The sales force should know about the technology and be capable of demonstrating it and answering questions and having a patience with the customer, taking their questions patiently and answering them both honestly and completely. There are also environmental factors which we group under PESTEL: the politics, economic, the societal, the technological, the legal and the environmental aspects. I'm not going to go through a PESTEL analysis of it here. That's dealt with in a separate video or a separate set of videos. But it's certainly the case that products need to be seen from different perspectives, and the sales force need to be skilled in addressing questions from different perspectives. There's also new product development. The sales force may be skilled in or knowledgeable about a particular product, but the shelf life for many products is becoming shorter and shorter as new developments are put in place. And there is a type of built-in obsolescence into many products. The products are simply being superseded at an ever-increasing rate. So that, for example, a television bought last year, this year will be almost certainly out of date. And next year, the television bought today will be out of date because there will be more advancements. And this is the world in which we live, and we are becoming accustomed to this. But the sales force need to be aware of it and need to be skilled in answering questions about the products, in demonstrating the products, showing an expertise about the product, but also allaying fears that the customers may be just lashing out money on a product which is going to become obsolete. The sales force must also know the existing strategies that were employed and learn from these. If they were successful, then try them again. So whatever sales tactics were used in the past that proved successful, keep those so that they may be used again. It's only worth changing tactics when the tactics are shown to fail. And looking at growth projections and objectives. Well, companies want to grow, so they want more sales. Generally speaking, not all companies want to grow, I agree, but a lot of companies want to grow, and to do that they want more sales, and there has to be ways in which the sales force can step up to meet that requirement. So in a sense, we're looking at the productivity of the sales team, their ability to sell more in a given time period, and what's required for them to do so. Now, according to Zoltner and Sinha, Salesforce design consists of the following elements. Now, we're going to go through these in diagrammatic form. So the first step here is the sales strategy. Step one is working out the sales strategy. And that means looking at customer segmentation. Customer segments with similar sales processes are defined. So customers may be grouped according to the particular segments from which they're drawn, but also the type of products they're interested in. So it's not just simply good enough to say that customers are interested in electrical products. They may be interested in a particular type of electrical product. But even then, they may be interested in more specific type of electrical product suitable for their age, the products which are fashionable amongst their peers. So it's important to identify the segments, the customer segments, and relate those back to the product range and understand the linkage between the two. The customer offering, well, product and service offerings for each customer segment are specified. Look at this segment and see what products meet that segment. A simple example here would be, let's say, students at college or at a university. They have particular requirements. Perhaps they want a modern product, one which is quite fashionable, looks good, functional, but also quite cheap. Perhaps they haven't got a lot of money. So if we look at that segment, the student segment, then what products can be arranged for that segment, so that the sales team will know that if a student arrives in the shop, they may be interested in a particular product, but they may also be interested in other products, because those other products are related to that segment. The sales process, well, activities for the desired customer offerings to each customer segment are specified. So that's the sales process. That's when the sales team become involved, and they set out their shop, metaphorically set out their shop. By that I mean they know what products that segment want. They engage the customer. The example we had, the student. They engage the student and explain the product, explain its desirability, its features, talk about its price, but also, just in case, link it on to other products, but only after the sale has been made. If the sale is clearly failing, then alternative products may be introduced. Now, step 2 is the go-to-market strategy. Sales and marketing channels. Well, channels, including the Salesforce for each customer segment, are specified. So what are the channels? Having recognized the different segments, the different customer segments, older people, people with families, students, and so on, looking at the various segments, however the segments are drawn up, it's then a question of working out what channels of communications are best used to contact those segments. Can the channels be advertising, leaflets? Will it be internet advertising, or television, or radio, or newspapers, magazines? What exactly will the channel be that will enable the contact between the customer and the sales force? Because both the customer and the sales force must have communications before sales can be made. So what are the channels? And how do the customer and sales force manage to meet up? Why do they meet up? Step 3 is the Salesforce design. Well, the Salesforce structure, degree and nature of specialization, roles, reporting, relationship, control and coordination mechanism. So how is the Salesforce constructed? The degree of specialization. They perhaps need people who have expertise in a few products, or maybe there's a highly specialist salesperson just dealing with one product. What's the role of that person? Is the role of that person to answer questions whilst another person will take the order? How is the whole exercise reported back? What's the learning from the exercise? Who reports back? What questions were asked? How are the questions dealt with? How effective were the questions dealt with? Was there anything novel or different about the whole encounter? And the Salesforce size. How many salespeople? How will Salesforce of each type of salesperson be allocated to customers and products? So what's the optimum size of the sales force? Let's say it's a large apartment store. How many sales personnel are required in there? If there are too many, it's wasteful. If there are not enough, orders may be lost. So how to decide on the sales force? How can they work out what the optimum sales force size should be? Now, someone must make that decision. Someone must decide. It's not a random question. It's an important question. And this will have to be based on experience, on history, on how long does it take to make a sale. How long will a customer, in a sense, tie up a sales person? What's the failure rate on on the sales. And indeed, what's the failure rate according to the statistics, what's the failure rate per member of the sales team? Just in case retraining is required, or the salesperson has been misplaced and the need to move to a different product. So there are many issues to be addressed in looking at the sales team. Now, the assignment of responsibilities, well, who will cover which customer and with what products and activities? How will the sales force be deployed geographically? I'll say geographically here. We can consider, let's say, a large store, a department store. Geographically, that will be our base. So will the sales force be deployed in electronics, or in household kitchenware, or white kitchenware? Where will that person be deployed? Where does that person have the best skills, and where will that person's talents be most suited? And it's for management to try to allocate the team according to their skills and abilities, and how well they're going to be received by the particular customer segment that they're going to deal with. But that's a management decision, and that has to be decided. So you can see there are quite complex issues in just working out the Salesforce team and the allocation of the Salesforce team. Now, the Salesforce structure, well, the focus is to allocate roles and activities according to the sales team. So management must allocate the roles and activities to each member of the sales team. Who is responsible for what? So there is also accountability. Bearing in mind, however, there are complex issues about how many staff are required per function or per product. The purpose of this section is to carry out and control activities which enable the organization to achieve goals, growth, and customer needs. So it's important that the Salesforce structure is configured in a way that the customers have a good experience. And even if they didn't buy a product, didn't make a purchase, they still had a good experience, and they're more likely to go back. So the organization will achieve its goals, perhaps in the long run, and it'll achieve its growth. But also customers have had a good experience. And it's important that the sales force are adequately trained and allocated to ensure that this happens. An organization structure provides an overall picture of the sales team, their activities, roles, reporting, and relationships. So looking at the organizational structure, it's possible to work out who is allocated to what function. We think of organizational structures as the CEO and the marketing director and the accounts director and so on, but we can carry it on down into the departments. So we have the head of the department, the section head. We've got the sales team underneath, and against each name will be the section that they're allocated to. And of course the performance of that section can be monitored. The Salesforce size. Well, the Salesforce structure is dependent on the size of the sales force. So the structure is dependent on the size of the sales force. Clearly, if there's only one person in the sales force, the structure is very simple. There's only one person. But if there are many people in the sales force, then there has to be a structure. Who deals with what? Where are they allocated? And who's in charge of that section? How did they go about making their sales? The sales force size plays a key role for an organization, such as turnover, expenses, costs, profits. Well, clearly the sales force influence the turnover. They're the ones who make the sales. So their effectiveness in making sales is reflected in the turnover figures, the sales figures. But there are also the expenses and costs, because the sales force must be paid, they must be looked after, and there is a cost of the buildings which may have to be apportioned, and there are costs involved. So overall, we can imagine each of these centers, these sales centers, as being profit centers. They receive the goods, they sell the goods, and in selling them there are costs. So we have a sales figure and a cost figure. We subtract one from the other, we get some idea of the profitability of that particular section. The following factors need to be addressed. How many salespeople are needed? Well, as I said earlier, complex question. It's for management to decide. If there are too many, as I said earlier, it's a waste. If there are not enough, there won't be a lot of sales. So it's trying to find that optimum number. And the chances are that will be done over a period of time when there's more experience, more information, more data upon which to make the decision. Then what kind of skills do they require? Are they specialists or generalists? It depends on the product they're selling. If it's a complex piece of electronics, or even a modern television, they could be seen as specialists. They know how to navigate the product, they know the technical details about the product. So if a customer who is knowledgeable and who has researched the product, perhaps online, were to enter a shop and ask about the screen resolution or the sound, or ask about some technical aspect of the television, they would receive an answer. And the answer is correct. That's a specialist. A generalist may know about televisions in general, not about that particular television, other than it's a television, but they're more generalist. So it depends on the nature of the product and how many different types of product the organization stock for sale. How many managers are needed to oversee all sales activities? Clearly managers are required, departmental managers, but there may be managers of sections within the department. So in electronics again, we'll stick with that example. In electronics there may be televisions, radios, different types of music players, and there may be different personnel there. So there might be a section manager looking after those. But also within the electronics area, it may carry on over to household appliances, vacuum cleaners or other appliances, and there may be another section head there with a knowledge of those that will deal with that section. But really a lot of this has to be answered through experience. The organization will start with a certain number and hope that number is correct, and then tweak it as they build up their figures and their data. The assignment of responsibility. Well, the salesperson must have sales targets to work towards. They must be allocated with some responsibility, account management or selling activity. Generally speaking, the sales team must have a target. If they haven't got a target, then they have really no incentive to try hard. The targets should be achievable. The target should not be unrealistic. Unrealistic targets cause frustration and may lead to high staff turnover But if they have realistic targets, they have something to aim for, and they will try to clinch the deal. And they know, without being impolite, they know when to terminate the conversation with the customer as to whether the customer is going to purchase. And if the customer has purchased, then the deal is done. It's a question of being polite and nice to the customer so that the customer feels happy about his or her treatment in the shop. But they don't have to spend the rest of the day speaking to that person. They should move on to the next customer to try and hit their target. The sales team can be allocated selling targets based on postcode, geographic coverage, target customer groups. It depends on the nature of the organization and the type of product. It may be that it's not necessarily a department store. It could be a team selling in a particular area. So they may go postcode. It may be door-to-door selling, which is becoming less prevalent. It's very expensive and not necessarily that rewarding. But they might want to have sales in a particular geographic area of so much. They will have done research into disposable incomes in the area, the prosperity of the area, and the type of people living in the area as to whether the products suit that type of area. So the sales team could be allocated on any basis, not necessarily just standing in a department store waiting for customers to walk in. Specialized accounts need to be managed more carefully. For example, specialist software for a particular industry. If it's a highly specialized product, the chances are there will be highly technical, well-qualified sales personnel, and every aspect of the sale may have to be recorded, particularly if it's a very high-value sale. So specialist software may be used to capture the information so that there are good records fed back to the organization about questions asked, how they were answered, what were the concerns of the customer. Was it the price? Was it the quality? Was it the configuration? Was it some aspect of the design? What was it exactly that occupied the customer's mind? So that information would be used then by the organization perhaps to redesign the product if there was enough feedback of that nature, to make the product more suitable to customer needs, which of course should lead on to additional sales. So these are some of the topics that we need to consider when we look at the Salesforce design. It's quite a practical exercise, but at the same time a very important exercise if sales are going to be achieved. And the sales are necessary not just for the commercial well-being of that organization, but those products will have been purchased perhaps from other producers, and the sales force of those other institutions will have worked hard to make those sales. So it's a chain going all the way back, and there are people further back, even in distribution, who will depend on those sales. So this is the last part of the chain, but the chain can be very long, ranging from manufacture, distribution. It can be a long chain, so it's important that this part of the activity is properly conducted. That's the reference I mentioned earlier on, and that's all we're going to deal with in this session. So let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.